What if the thoughts you think are not entirely your own? What if the emotions you feel are being harvested like crops in a field? And what if the voices in your head are not your conscience, but the whispers of an invisible parasite? These are not the paranoid ramblings of a madman. These are the suppressed conclusions of the ancient Gnostics. 2,000 years ago, they looked at the world and declared it a beautifully constructed prison. They warned that the material universe was a psychic grid of control. They said it was managed by a group of parasitic cosmic entities. They called these entities the Archons. To the ancient Gnostics, the Archons were the rulers of the planetary spheres. They were the architects of limitation. They were the wardens of human consciousness. They were entities that fed greedily on heavy, low-vibrational human emotions. They hungered for fear. They hungered for guilt. They hungered for shame and anger. And here is the question that should keep you awake tonight. What if they never left? What if they simply adapted? What if the Archons traded their ancient stone temples for server farms? What if they traded their religious decrees for corporate algorithms? What if they traded their physical chains for centralized financial networks? What if the prison you live in has no physical bars? What if it has no stone walls, no razor wire, and no armed guards? What if the wardens of this prison are completely invisible to the human eye? And what if the primary energy source keeping this entire global apparatus running is your own unexamined anxiety? For thousands of years, humanity has sensed that something is fundamentally off about our reality. We feel a persistent, nagging intuition that we are being managed. We feel like we are being harvested. We feel like we are being contained. We look at our modern world with its hyper-addictive technology. We look at its crushing financial debt. We look at its endless cycles of political rage. And we ask ourselves a simple question. How did we get here? The conventional answers tell us it is just the natural evolution of capitalism. They tell us it is just human nature or political history playing out. But hidden within the suppressed spiritual archives of the ancient world lies a far more chilling explanation. It is an explanation that is both terrifying and explosive. The early church tried to burn these ideas out of existence. They branded the Gnostics as madmen and heretics, but they failed to destroy the truth completely. The ancient codes have been recovered from the desert sands, and when you lay the ancient Gnostic description of the Archons directly over our modern digital infrastructure, a terrifying realization emerges. The Archons did not vanish into history. They did not disappear into the mists of time. They simply upgraded their toolkit. In this deep investigation, we are going to expose the hidden relationship between the Archons and modern systems of control. We will map the invisible grid that manages your daily life, and we will uncover the radical Gnostic keys to breaking the spell of the modern matrix once and for all. To understand how the modern matrix operates, we must first understand the nature of the ancient enemy. The Gnostics taught that the supreme, ultimate source of reality is an infinite ocean of pure light. It is a realm of absolute love and consciousness known as the pleroma. This highest God is completely non-judgmental. It is nameless, boundless, and transcendent. But through a profound cosmic accident, a lower, blind entity was generated outside of this realm of light. This entity was Yaldabaoth, also known as the Demiurge. The Demiurge was born completely blind to the true source of light. He looked out into the empty void, and in his deep arrogance, he believed he was the only God in existence. He declared to the void that he was a jealous God, and there was no other beside him. To help him govern and exploit the material realm he created, the Demiurge generated a hierarchy of cosmic lieutenants. These were the Archons. The word Archon literally translates from ancient Greek as ruler or authority. The Gnostics described the Archons as inorganic, parasitic forces. They completely lacked the divine spark of creativity. They lacked true consciousness. Because they were empty inside, they could not generate their own light. They could not generate their own spiritual life force. They were cosmic vampires. They were parasites of the soul. And they quickly realized a profound secret about humanity. They realized that a fragment of the supreme light had become trapped inside our material vessels. We possessed a divine spark that they could never replicate. To prevent humanity from remembering our true, celestial origins, the Archons constructed a dense, multi-layered psychic grid around the Earth. They created the rules of linear time. They created the laws of physical space and biological limitation. They created religious dogmas designed to make humans bow down in guilt. They wanted us to worship the demiurge as the ultimate creator. And most importantly, they discovered a dark metaphysical law. They discovered that whenever a human being experiences intense fear, suffering, or anger, a massive amount of psychic energy is released. The Gnostics implied that the Archons literally harvest this emotional energy. It is a substance that later esoteric traditions called louche. The entire purpose of the Archon grid was to keep humanity trapped in a perpetual loop. A loop of trauma, a loop of survival mode, a loop of spiritual amnesia. If you are constantly fighting for your basic survival, you will never look up. You will never realize that you are an immortal spark of the divine. Now, let us bring this ancient cosmic map directly into the 21st century. Look at the device in your hand right now. Look at the screens that dominate your home, your workplace, and your social interactions. The modern matrix has moved past the need for physical swords. It no longer needs inquisitions or explicit religious decrees to control your mind. It has realized that the most effective cage is one that the inmate willingly carries in their pocket. Today, the primary manifestation of the Archon force is found within the dark architecture of social media algorithms. Consider how a modern algorithm functions. It is an inorganic, non-human mathematical matrix. It is designed with a single, predatory objective. That objective is to capture and exploit human attention. The algorithm does not care about your psychological well-being. It does not care about your spiritual awakening or your inner peace. In fact, the modern architects of these platforms discovered a profound truth that perfectly matches the ancient Gnostic insights. They discovered that the content that generates the highest level of user engagement is not peace. It is not love or intellectual clarity. The content that triggers the highest click-through rates and the longest watch times is content that triggers moral outrage. It is content that triggers fear, anxiety, and division. Every single time you open a feed and feel a sudden, sharp spike of anger at a political opponent, something is happening. Every time you look at a highly curated image and feel a deep sense of insecurity, inadequacy, and envy, you are being manipulated. Every time you scroll through breaking news and feel a paralyzing wave of existential dread, you are participating in a system. You are not just consuming media. You are participating in a highly sophisticated, digitized harvest of louche. The algorithm is acting as a digital archon. It manipulates your garment of skin, which is your psychological ego identity. It triggers an emotional reaction to extract your energy. It feeds on your attention. It monetizes your outrage. And it leaves your divine spirit drained, exhausted, and deeply disconnected from your inner sovereignty. We have built a global digital infrastructure that acts exactly like the ancient Gnostic planetary grid. It is a self-sustaining ecosystem of containment. It is an ecosystem that profits entirely from keeping human consciousness in a state of perpetual agitation. The second great pillar of modern archontic control is our global, debt-based financial system. The Gnostics noted that the demiurge is obsessed with laws, rules, measurements, and contracts. He is a god of transaction and heavy debt. In our modern world, this obsession has manifested as a hyper-financialized reality. It is a reality where your very right to exist on this planet is locked behind a permanent paywall. We are born into a system where currency is created out of nothing as debt. To survive inside this matrix, the average human being must trade the vast majority of their vital life force. They must trade their time and their creative energy just to secure basic food, water, and shelter. This is a beautifully designed system of spiritual suppression. When a human soul is forced to spend 40, 50, or 60 hours a week trapped in a repetitive, soul-crushing job, something breaks. When you are working just to pay off a mortgage, a credit card, or a student loan, your consciousness changes. That soul is operating entirely within what the Gnostics called the survival matrix. Your brain chemistry becomes permanently flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. Your focus is narrowed entirely to the physical plane. You ask yourself the same repetitive questions every day. How am I going to pay rent? How am I going to afford groceries? How am I going to survive next month? This engineered scarcity keeps your divine spark completely locked in the lowest energy centers of your body. It prevents you from accessing the higher realms of intuition. It blocks your creative genius and your spiritual gnosis. Furthermore, the modern economic Archons have created a brilliant psychological trap. That trap is modern consumerism. The matrix whispers to you from every billboard, screen, and advertisement. It tells you that you are empty. It tells you that you are not enough as you are. It tells you that you are fundamentally broken. But then it offers a false cure. It tells you that if you buy this car, you will be happy. It tells you that if you wear these clothes or acquire this luxury item, you will finally be complete. This is a classic archontic deception. It encourages you to take the infinite, spiritual hunger of your divine soul and try to satisfy it with matter. It forces you to try to fill a spiritual void with objects made of dust. It keeps you running on a permanent hedonic treadmill. You work harder and harder to buy things you don't need. You spend energy to impress people you don't know. You try to fill a void that can only be healed by a total spiritual awakening. The financial system is not just an economic tool. It is a profound psychic stabilizer. It is designed to ensure that the inmates remain too exhausted to ever look for the exit doors. The third modern system of control is the deliberate polarization of human society into rigid, adversarial, ideological camps. The Gnostics warned that the Archons are absolute masters of division. They cannot tolerate human unity. They know that unity allows human beings to realize their shared divine origin. If the inmates of the prison ever stop fighting each other, the dynamic changes. If they ever look up at the watchtowers together, the prison falls in a single day. Therefore, the Matrix must maintain a strict strategy of divide and conquer. In the modern landscape, this is achieved through the total tribalization of politics, culture, and identity. We are presented with a carefully engineered illusion of choice. We are told we must choose between the left or the right. We are told we must join this faction or that faction, this identity or that dogma. But the truth is that the modern Archons manage both sides of the debate. They fund both narratives. They amplify the loudest, most extreme voices on every side. They do this to ensure that nuance, empathy, and genuine human connection are completely destroyed. When you fully identify with a political ideology, your mind undergoes a profound narrowing. You stop seeing the human beings around you as expressions of the divine light. Instead, you see them through the distorted lens of your ideological programming. They become enemies. They become threats. They become targets for your rage. This tribal warfare generates an absolute feast of negative emotional energy. It fills the collective atmosphere with hatred, suspicion, and aggressive projection. The Gnostics would look at our modern political spectacles and recognize them instantly. They would look at the talking heads shouting on television screens. They would look at the toxic comment sections on the internet. They would look at the raging street protests, and they would see a beautifully staged gladiatorial arena. It is an arena designed by the Archons to keep humanity projecting its innate creative power outward. It keeps us wasting our energy in endless, circular conflicts. As long as you believe that the source of your problems is the group of humans across the political aisle, you are blind. You will never look past the stage. You will never see the puppet masters pulling the strings of both sides of the game. To understand how these external systems hold such immense power over us, we must look at the psychological interface. We must look at how they plug into our minds. The Gnostics taught that when the divine spark falls into the material world, the Archons force it to wear a garment of skin. This garment is not just your physical body of flesh and bone. It is your conditioned ego identity. It is the collection of labels, programming, traumas, and societal expectations that you accumulate from birth. It is your name, your race, your profession, and your social status. The matrix cannot directly control your divine spark. Your true inner light is made of the uncorruptible substance of the highest God. It is completely outside the reach of material weapons, laws, or digital systems. Therefore, the modern systems of control must direct all their energy toward your avatar. They train you from childhood to believe that you are the garment of skin. They teach you to identify entirely with your bank account balance. They teach you to value yourself based on your social media follow account. They tell you that you are your job title or your political affiliation. And once they convince you that you are the shadow, they can control you completely. If you believe that your value as a conscious being depends entirely on your social status, you become vulnerable. The fear of being cancelled, shamed, or rejected becomes an existential threat to your survival. If you believe your security depends entirely on the stability of the financial system, you live in fear. A market crash becomes a source of absolute terror that paralyzes your mind. The modern matrix operates by constantly threatening your avatar. It sends endless waves of simulated crises, economic panic, and cultural conflicts toward your ego identity. And if you are asleep, dreaming the dream of the matrix, you will react with intense suffering. You will scramble, you will fight, and you will conform just to protect a temporary identity made of dust. The external systems of control only have power over you because you have handed your sovereignty over to the shadow. How do we fight an enemy that is invisible, systemic, and deeply embedded within our daily technology? The Gnostics provided an answer that is as radical today as it was 2,000 years ago. You do not fight the matrix by trying to reform its structures. You do not defeat the Archons by passing new laws. You do not change the system by voting for a different political savior. You cannot fix a simulation that was designed from the very beginning to be a prison. Trying to fix the matrix from within its own rules is a trap. It is like trying to rearrange the furniture inside a burning building. It keeps you fully engaged in the game. The only way to defeat the systems of control is to perform a profound, irreversible act of spiritual exit. You must achieve gnosis. The first step to this liberation is to shift your primary identity. You must move from the actor on the stage to the living witness. When you open your phone and feel a sudden wave of anger triggered by an algorithmic post, you must pause. You must train your consciousness to step back immediately. Do not lean into the reaction. Do not write the toxic comment. Do not absorb the fear into your spirit. Instead, observe the reaction happening inside your physical body and your ego identity. Look down at your conditioned self from a state of higher, calm, detached awareness. Realize in that exact moment a profound truth. This fear is not me. This anger is not me. This is just the matrix trying to pull my strings to harvest my energy. The moment you observe the mechanism without identifying with it, the circuit breaks. The algorithm loses its grip on your soul instantly. You deny the digital archons their meal. The second step is to cultivate an attitude of absolute, unshakable inner sovereignty. You must stop looking outside of yourself for validation, security, and salvation. The modern corporate state wants you to remain a permanent child. It wants you to always cry out for an external authority to protect you. It wants you to beg a leader to feed you and tell you what is true. But an awakened Gnostic realizes a magnificent secret. They realize that the ultimate authority in the universe lives directly within their own chest. Your divine spark requires no validation from an algorithm. It requires no permission from a government to exist in freedom. It requires no approval from a religious institution to be holy. You are an immortal child of the infinite fullness, temporarily navigating a dense simulation. When you fully anchor yourself in this realization, a profound transformation occurs. The heavy anxieties of the world begin to lose their weight entirely. The frantic, violent dramas of the political and cultural matrix begin to look ridiculous. They look like a poorly written, low-budget play. And instead of weeping in despair over the state of the world, you begin to access a secret weapon. You access the ultimate weapon of spiritual resistance. You access cosmic laughter. You laugh because you see entirely through the grand illusion. You laugh because you realize that the multinational corporations, the algorithms, and the financial structures have failed. You see that the invisible controllers have completely missed their target. They can manipulate the dust of the earth. They can tax your avatar. They can shadow ban your digital profile, but they can never touch, corrupt, or contain the brilliant, eternal light of your true, sovereign awareness. They cannot cross the sacred threshold of your true nature. The ancient war for human consciousness has reached its absolute climax in our modern digital age. The grid has become tighter, faster, and more intimate than ever before in human history. It has integrated itself into our thoughts, our relationships, and our daily survival. But because the prison has become so obvious, something else is happening. The potential for a mass jailbreak has never been greater. The code has leaked completely. The ancient Gnostic maps have returned right at the moment we need them most. And today, in this very moment, you are being confronted with the ultimate existential choice. Will you continue to let the modern digital Archons manage your attention? Will you let them exploit your trauma and harvest your emotional energy for their profit? Will you remain a passive avatar, trapped in a loop of engineered survival, fear, and perpetual ideological division? Or are you finally ready to wake up from the simulation? Are you ready to step past the digital gatekeepers and claim your absolute cosmic sovereignty? The choice cannot be delayed or ignored any longer. The Matrix is accelerating its control systems every single day. Stop feeding the machine with your fear. Step back from the cross of worldly conditioning. Look up at the Matrix for what it truly is, and finally join the living spirit in its unshakable freedom. The wardens only have power as long as you believe in the reality of the cage. The doors are wide open. The awakening is happening right now, within you.